This Zero Now program is brought to you with the support of our founding partners.
Let's introduce our very distinguished panelists that are all bring together their perspectives on school safety and security from a technology perspective. We'll start with Randy Welch. Randy is with Motorola and also has a background as an educator. So Randy, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself and your connection to the overall topic.
Sure. Thanks, Ara. And welcome, everyone. I'm not sure that I consider myself distinguished, but we'll go with that. So my name is Randy Welch. I am the Senior Director for Vertical Growth and Strategy at Motorola. Up until recently, I ran our education sales for several years. As Ara had said, I have an education background. I spent 20 years in education, almost primarily in special education, the last 9 of which I ran a school for students with autism and other neurological disorders. I will say this. I joked for years that I came over to the dark side of sales and the corporate world, and I still believe that. I will say, though, that I love to be able to do things like that through Motorola's partnership with Zero Now and everything that we've always done. Because for years, when I worked with kids, when I walked back to my car at the end of the day, I could always say, you know what, we made a difference. We did something to make the world a better place today. When I first came over to sales in a different company, I didn't have that. Where we are now, and I get to participate in this, and I know that everything that we're doing is making schools safer. It brings it back to that, the heartstrings being tugged. So not only am I able to work with all these wonderful people, but we know that we're making schools safe as we go.
Yeah, it's great working with you, Randy, as well. And yeah, it's all about the mission and moving things forward. So glad you could join us. Another former educator, and actually when she first joined in with Zero Now and you were actually founding council member of the National Council of School Safety Directors, because Jill Renahan was a school safety director at that point in time. So Jill, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you, Ara. I'm really excited to be part of this panel today, and I'm glad to see so many people jumping on from really all over the country. That's awesome. And I've been excited to be part of the Zero Now community as well. And I came out of a 34-year career in public education, all in the same district in Florida, but I had a lot of different jobs. So either I can have good stability or I can't keep a job. I'm not sure which of those is actually true. But following Parkland, I stepped into the role from administration. And like Randy, I was a former special educator as well. But I stepped into the role of security director for my district. And we had a lot of room for improvement. Let me just say it that way. And so I was able to work through that journey and make some, I think, really good improvements in our district down there in Florida. Now I work after retiring from that job, I came to work for Access Communications, and my title there is Education Segment Development Manager. Lots of words there to say that I, like Randy too, hold a mission in my heart about doing everything I can to spread the good word about how schools can be safer places. And that I say this a lot. School security is a place where the adage of it takes a village really is true. It takes all of us. It takes all the perspectives. And so it's exciting to be here with a group of folks who come from different backgrounds and different perspectives, because it just makes the whole journey richer and I think benefits the end receiver of that information.
No, that's great. Thank you, Jill. I'm glad you're a part of this. And Simon Renouf from the VP of Engineering at OmniAlert. Simon, if you wouldn't mind just providing a little background on yourself, please.
Sure, and honored to be here as well. Simon Renouf, VP of Engineering at OmniAlert. Prior to this role, I led the customer success team for a number of years and helped to implement real-time video analytics, including our visual gun detection product with many of our customers, including some very large K-12 school districts. That gave me a practical view of how video surveillance and artificial intelligence need to work together in real school environments. Today, leading engineering, we're now building that AI, not just the AI that runs on the cameras, but also then building out the notification and response workflows that go around that. So how an event is verified, who gets alerted, and what actions follow on from that. We integrate with the systems schools already use. So video management systems, access control, mass notification systems, monitoring, other monitoring platforms. So my perspective spans both the implementation and the technical challenges in engineering, not just how we use the cameras to detect a situation that needs attention, but how we turn that into timely information and coordinated action in response.
Exactly. And you bring that perspective in the trenches with schools and implementation and some of the challenges that have arisen and lessons learned. Thank you, Simon. Glad you could join us. And for participants, if you have questions for the panelists, please hit the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to that during the program. And Jill, like, one thing that you mentioned really kind of ties back to the whole approach with Zero Now and the path to safer schools, starting with a safety team, who's leading your safety efforts, assessing your vulnerabilities, where do you have gaps? And then looking to fund and implement those programs to prevent harm. The objective is to prevent harm at the end of the day. So with that, what is the primary purpose of a video surveillance system? Is it about deterrence? Is it about reducing response time? Is it for forensics? Is it for prevention? How has that changed, or has it been the same in your career span?
So I'll jump in here since I'm unmuted. I'll go first.
Please.
I think it's all of the above. So is it for forensic purpose? Yes. If somebody is engaging in criminal activity on a campus or near a campus, if it's, we want to know about that, and we want to be able to provide law enforcement the information necessary to proceed to deal with that. But beyond that, we want to know when some anomalous behavior has occurred, right? So having analytics telling us that somebody's coming through a perimeter gate or even over a fence, we want to know that before they reach our building, right? That standoff between the fence and our buildings where our students and staff are, we want to know that before they get that far. So the analytics really help with that. We mentioned a bit about assessment and that safety team. I think cameras, surveillance systems should address the problems that the safety team identifies in their vulnerability and risk assessment, right? We put them up in order to prevent and have really good situational awareness about what's going on. And what I fell in love with when I first learned about AI gun detection was, I had been pitched things that were sort of after the fact solutions, but I love the idea of being able to get ahead of that, or as they say, get left a bang. We want to know about that before that gun is able to be used against our students, or for that matter, a hatchet or a bat or any other weapon, right? So that's what I really like about what cameras can do now. We spend a lot of money hanging up surveillance systems. So having something that tells us more information than just the cameras do after the fact is empowering.
Randy, please.
Jill, you make a good point talking about sort of that mix between both. Years and years ago, well before I was in the industry, I did some research on the impact on cameras, right? Because we all hear, right? There's, on one hand, it can make people feel like it's police state. On the other hand, it can deter crime. Way back when, and I wish I knew the citation, there was research that showed that when cameras are first put up, you see a reduction of unwanted behaviors by like 60%, like overnight. Oh my Lord, there it goes. And then over time, that kind of returns. It may not return to where it started, but it will always return. And I think one of the issues that we have with our society right now is cameras are ubiquitous. I mean, I live in New Hampshire and I can walk around anywhere and see cameras. Now, granted, I have them in my house, so but everywhere you look, you see cameras. So I'm not sure that the deterrence is nearly as powerful as it used to be. So I think that's why we've had to transform to now we need it to be proactive for us. We need those analytics to look for things that maybe we can't see and notify us in real time when things are happening. And for those of you who are out there who are either redesigning your system or rethinking the system you have now, keep that part in mind. Gone are the days of just counting the number of cameras you think you need. Look at for every single camera you have, what are you going to use it for? What specific purpose do you want it for? And then design a system around that.
So what's interesting, guys, and Simon, just a quick point here. There was a survey at a university in Oregon. One of our board members actually had a survey to gauge the climate of safety of the campus. And the number one thing that when the campus asked, what can we do to make you feel safer? More cameras was interesting because you look at the generation. I know some of us. I know I'll speak for myself. Growing up in the 80s, you look at the fear of the surveillance state in the future, like you mentioned, Randy. But we're used to it now, and the younger generation has grown up with cameras in their nursery. Simon, what are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I think certainly the role of cameras is evolving. That we see a lot of camera systems in schools that were deployed for those forensic use cases to see what happened, sometimes for situational awareness to understand what's happening, but more and more it's that real-time detection and response use case, and bringing to attention the things that need to be looked at now. And I don't think schools so much have a lack of cameras these days. I think they have a lack of attention, right? And that's where the integration of these systems with other technologies, and having a layered approach where the cameras are a foundational part of, I think is where we're at now.
Interoperability is core to everything we talk about in Zero Now. It needs to be you need to leverage your entire infrastructure, and we hear this all the time. Technology is not that everything. I mean, yes, there's the cultural aspects of things, but technology helps humans be able to monitor multiple cameras. And on that note, Jill, I mean, so is there somebody at every single school that's sitting there with a video wall all day just staring at cameras? I mean, how does that typically work?
Well, there's not. And by the way, even if there were, I just was doing a little research on this, and a study out of the UK found that if a person was paying attention to one monitor, they had about 85% accuracy on identifying things. That's a human. And then, though, if you gave them up to 9 monitors, which, by the way, isn't that many, when you look at a school, their accuracy dropped to 53%. So that's one person looking at just one monitor versus 9. Add to that, then they need a break about every 20 to 30 minutes in order to stay fresh. So I don't know of a school district out there, or a university for that matter, that has personnel that they can have devoted to that. And then even if they did, the accuracy wouldn't be good enough. What I love about analytics and the use of technology and using the brains of the computers is that they don't sneeze, they don't take a break, they don't need a 15-minute break for union purposes, right? They're always on, they're always watching. We get that information and they can process things much more rapidly than a human alone can do. Now, having said that, there's got to be a human in there, vetting that information for accuracy and doing something about the response, right? When responses are all automated, we can end up really putting our students and our staff in precarious situations because we maybe lock doors down that they might need to use to come inside from an outside active, threat. So it's important that we keep the humans in the loop.
You mentioned something important, Jill, about locking doors, and we, Zero Now published a foundational document about the foundational school security starts with doors that can lock from the inside, even before you look at advanced technology. So, because even if you detect a threat, if you can't lock the doors from the inside, then you're in trouble. Randy, please.
I want to come back to what Jill was saying, but real quick on that. I've been a proponent for years of access control first. And that is, cameras are fantastic. They can do some amazing things. But if you are not restricting access to your building, cameras are only going to show you the bad things. They're going to show you the things that you don't want to see. So I've always said, make sure you have every single door you have secured well before you even consider cameras. So I always joke I'm a horrible salesperson because I sell it.
Yes. Don't buy our stuff, please. Yeah.
So Jill had mentioned the kind of the attention issue with socks, right? Where someone's trying to watch this, right? There's a classic video. I've shared this for years. Our CTO used to show this all the time. And after this, don't do it right now because we're so fascinating. You want to pay attention to us. There are two YouTube videos, I think from like 2010. One's a selective attention, and the other one's called Monkey Business Illusion, I think. If you go to those and watch those, you'll see what we're talking about. I'm not going to break too much into it, but it's a video of people kind of, doing different things, bouncing a basketball, and then something happens, and the average person misses it. And so now imagine a screen where you've got one person in a dark room looking at, 20 plus monitors, all filtering through different cameras. There is just no way a human can do that. And make it really make sense, right? There's other things that you've got to do to make that work. And I think that's where, and we're going to come back to analytics a lot, I'm sure, is we've got the technology now to have someone look at that for you, right? So the AI is in the background saying, hey, this is different, this shouldn't be here. And now, instead of me looking at 24 different monitors, I've got one right in front of me that glows red when it says, hey, I need you to pay attention to this, right? And I think and even if you don't have a monitor that you're looking at, you can still send that to, your cell phone. You can have it pop up your computer. You can send it to your radios. All of these other things happen so that it's moving around our attention issues, right? It's despite ourselves, it's going to help you.
Yep. It sounds like my wife every Sunday when I'm watching NFL now with four different windows open simultaneously. How can you watch all four screens, all four games simultaneously? Yep. Only the Bills game, right, Kevin Eberly? So Simon, so you mentioned integration. So, and what Randy was just also alluding to. I mean, what are some types of system integration, security infrastructure that should be interconnected and automated if there is a threat that is detected using the video analytics that are on your camera system?
Yeah, again, I think as Jill mentioned, it's very important for the school to have, developed a plan and identified where the vulnerabilities are. From a systems perspective, you want to make technology selections that will interoperate with each other. So if you have an analytic for, say, weapons detection, and you've invested in an access control system, you want those two systems to be able to integrate. We see access control be fairly common. Obviously, VMS integrations and alerts into operations center type software being the most common type of thing we see. But we also see integrations with digital signage, with light and sound to be able to make announcements and get messages out, as well as with other types of emergency notification systems to allow key staff members and community members to understand what's happening as an event unfolds.
It's all about identifying the threat as early as possible, then automating the response to keep people out of harm's way. Once again, using technology as a tool. Randy, you have thoughts on that?
I was going to say what you said, automating the response, and I want to go back to something that Jill said. There's this wonderful thought that an automated response is kind of what we want. You hear something, you see something, and bang, there's a lockdown, right? Um, I always caution very much against that. There needs to be a human. The AI is beautiful for giving a human real time, bang, you have to make a decision. And there's AI that'll help you make the decision. But the moment you take that human element out of it, you run the risk of false alerts doing lockdowns, right? We've all seen this, right? How many lockdowns do you have before people start ignoring them? How many times does that faulty smoke detector go off before you just rip it out of the ceiling and throw it away?
No, you're absolutely correct, Randy. Yes, that is, you're 100%. Simon, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of figuring out what your response plan is in those situations, and we've seen some organizations implement a soft lockdown, so it doesn't necessarily announce that to everybody, but maybe it locks the doors to give that human the time it takes to look at a short amount of video and decide what's going on, and then be able to unlock the doors. And the technology just takes some of the manual, the human delay out of that process, and lets the human beings do the thing that they're best at, which is understanding the context, putting it in, putting and deciding, making that executive decision about what needs to happen next.
Yeah, and I mean, I would just go to the point of perimeter doors should be locked all the time. Classroom doors should be locked all the time. So students should be in classrooms behind locked doors. The entire perimeter should be locked down. It's really, what about those other spaces? And those are the ones that would be most likely to be affected, right? So students in the cafeteria, the media center, those large group gathering spaces that traditionally we have free come and go from throughout a school day. Those are the ones that then would most likely be affected. But for example, students who leave I was in the South, for a long time. Almost all of our PE activities were outdoors. If something were happening outdoors, we might want to bring those students back inside very quickly. Well, if those doors are locked at that point in time, then that's much more challenging. But getting them inside away from a threat, for example, a tornado might be a time we bring students in very quickly, but we want the doors to be secure behind them. They just still need to be able to have free ingress for a very brief amount of time, right? But for the most part, most doors should be locked most of the time throughout school days. And I'm going to go back to something Simon said a minute ago about an ecosystem. These integrated systems have to work really well together and seamlessly. So if people are adding in a new solution, layering it on top of what they already have, some of the testing has to be on that integration, right? To make sure that they don't undo the previous work that they've done by adding in this new element to it. And it shouldn't be something that's only ever used during crisis, because if we only use it during crises, then we're not going to remember how to do it during the next one, unless we have crises every week. And hopefully no one's experiencing that.
Let's hope not. That's a great point, Jill. Randy, Jill mentioned, outdoor activities. So what would you advise a school administrator where cameras should be located on a school grounds, inside, outside? I mean, any guidance on that?
It's funny because we get asked that question a lot. And I'm going to give that kind of weak answer. It depends. Right. It depends on so much. It depends on the environment you're in. I mean, now I'm a proponent for after you've secured the building. I'm a very big proponent for make sure that you can see outside first, and the sources of egress and ingress, right? So make sure all of your doors are seen. Make sure your parking lot can be seen. And we're not just for tragic events. I mean, fender benders, cars being scratched, all those are daily things. Slip and falls. So where the majority of people gather first. So if I'm looking at a budget and I have a limited budget, then I'm going to say, where's the biggest bang for my buck? Where can I put them first? Right. And it's going to be those fundamental areas first. My own preference is outside first, then inside. But once you get inside, then your first areas are those large gathering spaces, right? So your cafeterias, your main hallways, your atriums, media centers, that type of thing. And then go from there, right? As budget allows. I think the other thing is if we look at is it SEPTED, the sort of new way of designing buildings where they're designing them with the thought of integrating with cameras. So we don't have all these small little alcoves that God knows what happens in, where you've got wider spaces where cameras can see more. So now you need less cameras in order to be able to see that. And if you've designed the building right, it's driving people where you want them to be, and then you can have cameras in those areas. Jill, what did I miss there?
No, I would agree with everything that you said, Randy. Certainly the exterior is where more of your risk is going to happen, from outside coming in. And again, whether that's a storm, whether that's vandalism, whether that is a parking lot fight, those kinds of spaces, they definitely need to be monitored by use of cameras. So I would agree with all of that. The large group gathering spaces, whether or not we're monitoring those well enough. Again, I talk about, if a group of students is gathering in a K-12 environment without adults present, something's going to happen. It's not usually going to be something that we want to have happen on our campus. So we need to have some information about what's going on there. And analytics too can tell us something about that crowd behavior. If you start to see crowd surge or numbers really grow, then we know maybe we want to amp up the number of people that are out there, or at least get our security staff notified that something's happening there and we should pay attention. And as much as we can prevent, we should try to prevent. And I think that's your description of where to place those cameras is perfect. And I do appreciate what you said about SEPTED and the changes in the way we're thinking about school design. I had where I was assistant principal at the high school, they built these outdoor stairwells where you could get in there behind things, and as you said, who knows what was going on. Not good. So trying to cover all of those little nooks and crannies with cameras is definitely more costly. So it's a better look to have those wider open spaces without those crannies, and it's also more cost effective.
Jill, one area that you've been speaking on a national basis about as far as where to place cameras is something that has been overlooked, and it typically is overlooked: school buses. Would you mind talking a little bit about cameras on school buses and how that has evolved and where that's headed?
Yeah, so buses have had cameras for a really long time. Just being able to access that footage has been like something from the beginning of video surveillance, right? The bus goes back to the compound, we pull the hard drive, somebody reviews that footage to look and see if the thing we're looking for happened then. We're not getting anything from that kind of a system really about being proactive or responsive in a timely manner. And so then they look for that footage. They might share that footage either by videotape. This happened in my day as an administrator, by being hand delivered a videotape where they had transferred it, or then going a little bit more into the digital age. But we wouldn't have any capacity for real-time intelligence about what was going on those school buses. And in my view, schools have done a pretty good job of sort of hardening their perimeters for the most part. I think they're taking this security responsibility very seriously. But in terms of school buses, we're not that far along yet. But what can happen these days is that we could have real-time feed from that video for an emergency purpose only. We wouldn't stream it all the time. And it's also possible that we could do something with live talk down into that bus at the time. And, for me, I, as a elementary school principal, my two most challenging neighborhood bus runs, they were probably the shortest runs, but where I got 90% of my problems for buses came out of those two. I might have had a substitute bus driver, a different one in the morning and in the afternoon. And so, there I was, like, the bus drivers didn't know the kids to be able to correct them. But if I could have looked into that bus and seen those students, I could have called them by name and said, stop what you're doing. We're going to talk about this tomorrow, right? That's more impactful than this stranger who's driving them down the road. So I think that's coming. We already have real-time GPS and student ridership information that's available in real time as well. So what needs to happen next is a really good way to stream that video back to the school.
Always great insight, Simon.
Yeah, even without the video streaming, which getting a good quality stream off a moving bus with the cellular connectivity requirements and everything is an extra technical challenge. However, now with compute like the NVIDIA Jetsons, low power inference devices that can be installed on the buses, it's now possible to take those live streams and perform analytics on them in real time locally on the bus, and then only have to send up alert information if something happens. So if we were to detect a firearm or a fight or something that was happening on the bus, the driver doesn't need to necessarily stop and communicate and somehow communicate that in. That alert can be going out with the bus's location to people who can help to initiate a response for that situation. That's a technical possibility now, and we've seen some tentative deployments of the technology. We're looking forward to how that develops this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. And we're over halftime here for football season getting. But anyhow, we have a lot of great questions that came in via registration and the Q&A. So just to remind folks, if you have a question for Randy, Jill, or Simon, please hit the Q&A button. We'll start with this one here. If anyone, feel free to jump in. We have a question here. What are the pros and cons of using facial recognition or biometric data and video surveillance in K-12? Randy, you want to take that one?
This one's always dangerous. You touch it kind of with the 10-foot pole. Although I'm still trying to get over being on a bus and having the voice of Jill talking a kid down. I'm just thinking that would be awesome. Yeah. So facial rec, it's an interesting concept. I mean, what I would say very first is look at the municipality you're in, and whether you're even allowed to. Right? I mean, there are certain states where it's just not legal. For whatever reasons, there's arguments on both sides of, why you use it, why you don't. I can tell you just from looking at some of the major incidents that have happened in this country, how many times have we seen something on the news and then the very next thing we hear is this was a known suspect or it was a known person, right? And without getting into sort of the politics and the personal freedom part of it, I imagine lives and I'm in this business to keep people safe. And if there is someone who I know is known and a true risk to my children, I want to be able to find that person when they come in. So for that type of thing, I would want facial recognition on my exterior cameras. So as that person is approaching the school, I can instantly have my SRO or security or whatever meet that person prior to them even entering the door. And again, I understand that that's fraught with a whole lot of other things. Right. But I will say that for me, in the end, it's saving that life. And the thing that, aside from the actual loss of life, the thing that annoys me the most of the things that we hear on the news is it was a known suspect. And more often than not, a little plug for a different technology here. More often than not, we knew the person telegraphed it on social media. No one in here sells social media monitoring. I can tell you, go buy it. Because that is one of those things so that you can sort of have your ear to the ground of what's there before it comes out. So.
Jill.
Well, Randy mentioned, check your local ordinances. Facial recognition as applied to students is illegal in many parts of the country. In fact, I would say most. I know of one state that has allowed it for very specific reasons when a student has had a behavioral threat assessment that indicates that they pose a significant threat or did they bring a big risk? Schools could use that, for example, at extracurricular activities, which are typically less monitored than in terms of who's coming and going than school days. So check your local ordinances. I think that facial recognition is something a lot of people are in favor of after an event's occurred, but not before. And so I think, that's always kind of chancy. Why didn't you do more? Well, do what the law allows you to do. Engage in the activities that are appropriate to monitor who students are, where they're coming from, and where they're going to, but be within the boundaries of the law.
Simon.
I think, security doesn't automatically trump privacy by any means, but by the same token, privacy doesn't require us to abandon useful security technologies. I think the goal needs to be proportionality. You need to ask what is the information that we need to achieve our safety objective, and then to as an engineer we follow the principle of least privilege, right? So then to determine what is the appropriate time for that identifying information to be stored, to be shared with other people. I think one of the risks we fall into is just collecting identity data and storing it in perpetuity and allowing it to be searchable by anybody. And that really, as part of our product development processes, we need to ensure that we're only storing the information that's necessary, to assist in meeting a specific safety objective. In the case of object detection, for weapons detection, for example, we don't really need to know who a person is to know that they're holding a gun. So we don't need to know about identity upfront in that object detection use case. That may be useful later down the chain when we're trying to figure out who somebody was, if it becomes forensic or if we haven't been able to respond in time. But most of the time, somebody's dress, what they're wearing, enables re-identification across other cameras without needing to have facial recognition. And I think other types of identifying technologies have the same thing. You don't store things that you don't need to store, and you don't make them available to people who don't absolutely need to know.
Randy.
In addition to that, and one we haven't talked about yet is LPR. You take a high school, and most high schools, for a student to be able to park there, you got to register the vehicle. They got to know who it is, so you always know who that person is. Now, if a student were to be suspended, expelled, or whatever, have that car on the list as they come. And again, this is where I agree with Jill 100%. Where keep a human always in the piece, because you may see that car, you may see that person. That should trigger a human going out and speaking to that person, or at least making the decision on what needs to happen. But there are multiple ways that we can restrict who enters our buildings without breaking into privacy.
Absolutely critical. Jill, did you want to add on to that?
Well, I was just going to touch on the privacy piece, and while students have some rights to privacy, certainly their educational records, and our video surveillance doesn't automatically become a student record just because a student's in it. It depends on what we do with that, as Simon referenced. who has access to it, how is that video being used, but notifying folks, being transparent that we indeed are recording, not necessarily releasing all of our video to public at large. We run into some problems then as well. So who has access to that video, as Simon referenced? Where is it being stored? For how long? Who has access to see it live, and who has access to see it recorded? And who can do anything with that? And then, is the underlying video, is it preserved if we do need to preserve it after an incident, an accident, whatever it is? Is it preserved in its original format so that we know that it's not been altered in any means? That's really important as well, to protect everybody, the district as well as the individuals that are recorded in that video.
If I can just add to everything Jill just said, here's my non-technology soapbox. Everything Jill just said, you should have a board policy for. Every single one of those things. In absence of policy, they go to I forget what it's called, what you normally do on a day-to-day basis. And that can get you in a whole lot of trouble. You should have a policy on retention. How long are you going to save? You should have a policy on, if a camera goes down, how quickly you're going to either replace it or cover it. There should be a policy on who's allowed to see video. There should be a policy on, at what point it becomes FERPA, and where you have to save it. All of these things are incredibly important to not only how you function on a day-to-day basis. I mean, policies can, if they're done well, can make your day-to-day run better. But when there's even a simple investigation, that policy can open you up to huge or rather a lack of policy can open you up to huge liability. And you and I have talked about this. I've been on a kick for years. I really do want to put together a group of model policies that we can then share with, members of Zero Now, members of PASS, all of that thing, to be able to say, hey, this is what you need to do.
Yeah, Randy, I just jotted that down exactly. We're going to do it this year with the Zero Now Advisory Council. That's going to be the top of the agenda for sure. So we're talking about technology, and there's some questions about technology that you guys feel free to jump in and answer. And Randy, you said it many times today, and I cannot support that anymore. Technology is here to be a force multiplier for humans, for people. It's not about replacing people. It's about helping people be more effective. You can't monitor 1,000 cameras simultaneously. You can't call, 1,000 classrooms, but the entire building. I mean, those are all just basic things. So we have a question here from Eric, and actually this is very well aligned on this. And I think I know the answer to this question, but feel free to jump in. From both the school and technology provider perspectives, where do you see the biggest communication gaps between schools, manufacturers, and integrators when evaluating new security technology? What can each party do to better make sure technology decisions are driven by actual safety and operational needs rather than simply adding more technology? And you know what? We talked about this earlier. It's about having that assessment, understanding where your vulnerabilities and your risks are in your school, and where does technology help fill those gaps. But that would be my take on it. But Randy, love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, that one, that struggle's real, right? I mean, I think we run into that on a daily basis. Because listen, as a manufacturer, sometimes we go, I think the world needs this. And we design something that's really cool. And then we go, oh, wait a minute, maybe we didn't do that. I think that what it comes down to, and we all own a part of this, is it's incumbent on us as manufacturers to make sure we understand what our customers need, to make sure we understand how our customers are using things. We see the evolution of behavior in school and events and all that, and we're getting feedback. On the other side, it's incumbent on users to be able to reach out to us and say, hey, we need this. It would be great if we could do this. Maybe we could add this, because that's how we function. We do advisory boards. We all do the advisory boards. I think we could probably do a better model if I'm being completely honest. But yeah, I think that it comes down to communication. And Jill spent years in schools. I spent years in schools. We've been out of schools for years now. And a lot's changed. So unless we're talking to our customers and getting that feedback, we don't know.
Yeah, exactly. Jill, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with everything Randy said. I think I like the notion of pilots and beta testing really, and being, for end users, what do you need? Here's what we think. Does it meet your needs? And for end users, I was one of those too. Be super critical in that pilot stage. Don't, talk about what the needs are and what solution you think needs to happen, and let the manufacturer be aware of that. Don't be shy about doing that. And I've been on both sides of that coin now. And I didn't want to be one of those people who did nothing but complain on one hand. On the other hand, it's got to be real enough to get through and be honest about what is actually needed to help make schools as safe as they can be, right? So I think, be willing to try on some of those things and see if they work for you, and be really open and honest about feedback. That's for the end user, the customer. And then for the manufacturer, they got to be there. They got to be present, and they've got to seek that feedback out and take it seriously when they get it from those valued customers. Those opinions really are helpful.
Yeah, no doubt. Simon.
Yeah, I think with the complexity of the technological ecosystem out there, it's challenging. But I think it's important for, as a manufacturer, to be to understand your place in the ecosystem and where your technology fits in, and then to be very intentional about how you interoperate with other parts of the ecosystem. Certainly for us, it's having open and composable workflows and flexibility in how we structure our response to a weapons detection type situation, and ensuring that we test that pretty rigorously with the end users before we go live, before we deploy, that we understand what's working well and not well when the rubber meets the road in a deployment, and that through the life cycle of the product, that you're also providing that feedback to say, when as different situations come up and you encounter different challenges, in responding to a situation, how could we have made that better? Or, is there some changes we can make to the way this works? And being very intentional about evaluating the operation of the system with your partners, with your technology partners and your suppliers, so that feedback can be turned into better product.
Jill.
Yeah, I just would wanted to say too that I think that follow-up and really good training is really crucial. I think that there's not enough of that done, and it's not done for long enough. So I buy a new, let's just say, camera system. I get trained in it one time maybe by my integrator, and then I'm supposed to remember how all of those bells and whistles work now for the rest of my life. So it's really important not to do that. Real learning doesn't happen in a one-time sit and listen, or sit and watch. It happens over time with hands in it, using it, seeing how it flows and functions and works for people in their daily life. Because if it doesn't work then, or it only works then marginally, it's not going to work in the midst of a crisis. We're just not, we lose some executive function in our brains. So we need that ongoing support and fine tuning and check-ins to make sure that our end customers really do understand and can use the technology well.
And unfortunately, we're running low on time. We could do another hour, but I know everyone else has stuff going on here. Before I ask for Randy, Jill, and Simon for their final thoughts, we have take one more question from the participants. Joe asks, we use analytics with our cameras mostly in identifying vehicles or people entering property. things of that nature. Rarely are there false alerts from that type of event. This tech has been around for a while, knowing full well that nothing get right all the time. When it comes to very specific things that AI is looking for, such as identifying firearms, where are we when it comes to reliability? Are we there now or 6 months out? Who wants to take that question? As far as
I mean, I'm really interested to hear what Simon says about this one. But I can say it gets better. I mean, the beautiful thing about AI, and how we're using AI now is that learning curve. I guess it would be less steep. It's moving a whole lot faster. I remember when we first came out with some of our analytics, almost 10 years ago, they were great, but they weren't always as accurate as we wanted. And as we see now, they're getting better and better every day. And literally every day, it's getting better and better. And I'm going to come back to the same theme as you still need a human, because you still want someone to look at that and verify that yes, this is what it is, and not just a firearm, a backpack, a missing laptop. You want to make sure it's the right one as you're doing a search. All of those type of things. It's what the AI is allowing us to do now is, rather than us looking for hours and hours of video, it's saying, hey, I think this is it. What do you think? Right? And then we can make a decision from there.
Yep, no doubt. Simon, thoughts on the reliability of the technology today?
Yeah, it depends what you're looking for from an object detection standpoint. Something like an intrusion detection system and identifying the presence of a person, it's fairly accurate to be able to identify a presence of a person even in the distance on a camera. They tend to be fairly large objects, and vehicles too. When it comes to detecting a firearm, especially a handgun, it's a very small handheld object. So having the visual coverage to be able to reliably detect that is probably the first step in the process. And cameras that are designed for broad surveillance sometimes don't have the resolution that you need to reliably get a gun at a great distance. So there's some camera selection type challenges there to make sure that you're getting coverage in the places that you need to in order to be able to reliably detect a gun. From a technical perspective, if you have the right resolution to be able to pick out those small defining characteristics of the object that you're interested in, then the technology is very accurate right now. Like our reliability in being able to detect a gun is extremely high. The second challenge then becomes the noise factor, so eliminating the false positives. There are lots of handheld objects that, held at just the right angle and the right way, can appear to be a firearm, for example, hand scanners or phones. It's amazing how many kids in school will run around with their phones and do the old pow pow at each other, and those can get challenging. But we process billions of frames a day, and our false positive rates are extremely low enough that they're easily handled by a relatively small team of human reviewers to provide that first gate in the process, to verify that there's a gun, and then to escalate the human verified things to a decision maker. I would guess that very shortly here we'll get to the point where we're quiet enough that you don't need that first human review, that the human reviewer can be exclusively an executive function, and have enough reduction of noise that first responder or decision maker in the process can be the person who gets the alert straight off the system.
And we could continue this conversation because there's a lot more we could dive into, like talk about the resolution of the cameras, and because that's a big factor, but since we don't have time on that right now. But before we wrap things up, just want to ask each of you just for any final thoughts that you have, or any words of wisdom that you'd like to share with our attendees. Randy, we'll start with you.
I would go back to start with access control. Make sure that you are literally controlling the access to your building. And then always remember, whatever technology you buy, it's only there to make you better at what you do and to keep all of our kids safe.
Amen. Jill.
Yeah, so I think I would say start with problem identification, right? Understand what it is you're trying to resolve, and then find the solutions that will help you do that. And sometimes the solutions are not technology. Sometimes the solutions are more training or a better culture of safety and security. So don't forget that piece of it, the human part of it, both in response but also in prevention. That I think is where I would end.
Yep, I agree. Thank you, Jill. And Simon, your final thoughts, please, sir.
I'd probably build on those last two comments and say, you know, take into account your layered security plan, understand where your technology selections fit into that picture, and then, you know, when it comes to the technology selection, you know, choose partners that play well together, that you can integrate, that you can lock those jigsaw pieces together, and create a cohesive, safety plan.
Awesome. Thank you, Simon. And speaking of the human side of things, so our next conversation is September 22nd, and we are talking, this is a topic I'm very excited about. The front office as a security control point. The front office has such a critical role when it comes to safety and security, and it's not technology based. It's about the front office. So that's September 22nd, 2 p.m. We'll have the registration out. We have the whole full season coming out in the next week or so. So keep an eye out for that. So thank you, Randy. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Simon, for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Hopefully you've learned a couple new things. I certainly did, for sure. And we'll see you all soon. Stay safe and take care, everybody.